Good afternoon. My name is Parks Coggins. I'm Vice President, Heart, Vascular, and Oncology Services with Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System. I am here because my boss could not be here. With some of the changes that Katherine just mentioned, I am excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about workforce development, a little bit about AI. I will tell you I'm not an expert in AI, but I think I know a little bit enough to be dangerous. And so looking forward to talking to you about some of the things that we're already seeing in the healthcare arena around AI and technology.
Thank you, Parks.
So good afternoon. My name is Paul Sinanian. I am the manager of our talent programs, Qualification, and Apprentices at BMW Manufacturing. I am, with him, not an expert in AI. I am the person that has to deliver all the content to an entire population, though. So I'm learning rapidly, and I'm looking forward to actually talking to you guys about what we're doing at BMW and how things are evolving with us.
My name is Corey Giesling. I'm the Assistant Director for Workforce Development at the Commission on Higher Education. I am one of the steering committee members for the Coordinating Council for Workforce Development that Dr. Perez spoke on this morning, and I'm on the pilot committee for an AI application we are seeking to help kind of make this seamless education and workforce transition possible for the state's residents. Also one of the state's representatives on the Southern Regional Education Board's Commission on Artificial Intelligence and Education. I'm a former history major, so this has all been reskilling and upskilling in the last 6 or 7 years of my career, but looking forward to having this conversation.
Thank you.
Then I'll round things off. Good afternoon. Tom Payne. I work for Siemens. I am the head of our solutions business here in North America. We have a base in the Greenville area, sort of historically, for historical reasons due to the location of some of the manufacturing bases as a German company coming to North America 25 years ago. The Upstate and South Carolina welcomed our organization and with open arms. Our organization and the team that I lead bring automation solutions to manufacturing in North America, the full portfolio that Siemens offers. And it's obviously critical when we're talking about some of the topics that are on the agenda today, that as an organization we work closely with academia to bring in the future talents into not only our organization, but also the organizations that are going to be applying our tools and solutions to obviously improve society and achieve sort of the common goals that we're working with our partners. So looking forward to contribute to the conversation today from the position of a technology company such as Siemens with the scale that we have and obviously the great relationship that we've been able to foster over the years with the university.
Well, thank you. As you can see, we have a very talented panel to have this conversation. Before we get started, I know it's the afternoon, and this is a tough spot to be in because you've had lunch and a delicious cheesecake or cobbler. So we're going to do a quick non-gen AI on-the-spot survey to show resilience. I'm going to ask you guys to all stand up, even the panelists. Now, I want you guys to be truthful about your answers. No cheating on this test. Remain standing for as long as you have used the technology that I'm going to talk about. And I think you'll understand by the end of this who the resilient ones in the group are who've seen a lot of change. So if you've used a smartphone, stay standing. If you've used social media at any point, stay standing. If you've used a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, you can remain standing. So far, so good. Now, let's get a little bit harder here. If you've used a flip phone, stay standing. Okay? If you ever used a pager, stay standing. This is one that you'd put on your waist, guys, and it would only have a number on it. I see all the healthcare folks are still standing.
First dropout, sorry.
If you've ever used the internet, you can stay standing. If you've used a fax machine, you can stay standing. If you know what a modem is, you can stay standing. By the way, fun fact, the Hayes modem, which, anybody remember the Hayes modem? The fun fact, Dennis Hayes, who that modem's named after, came from Spartanburg. He went to Spartanburg High School, and he's back in town. So he's showing his education there, Russell. If you've ever used a rotary phone, you can remain standing. You gotta explain what that is. Yeah. This will probably do what a rotary phone is. I understand. If you've ever used a party line. A what? A party line. Okay. What is a party line? So there's a quick question in the audience. What is a party line? That was back in the day before we each didn't have phone lines to our homes, and you would share the line with your neighbor. And if you picked up the phone, they may be on a call. Okay. Those of you who are still standing, if you notice the technology that I ran through, those of us who are still standing, we've come a long way, baby. We are resilient enough to figure this Gen AI stuff out. So thank you guys for standing. Hope that got the blood circulating before we get this conversation going. So, thank you. So as I listened to the conversation earlier today with our with the panel that we had on earlier this morning, there were a couple of things that really became very obvious to me. This is a deeper conversation, and I think we just heard that from Christina, that it's not going to be as easy as, for those of you who remember when the internet actually happened, I remember having a coworker who I really respected saying, this internet thing is really never going to amount to much. I have a feeling this AI thing is going to amount to quite a bit. And with our group today, I want to kind of talk through how it's impacting some of the different industries here. And we're going to start with healthcare. So Parks, as you're thinking about these AI changes, are there concerns in healthcare about AI, maybe privacy or losing the doctor-patient relationship?
I think the quick answer is yes. I think one of the things you heard about in the last presentation that's probably more of a concern is the bias piece of AI. And when you look at, my understanding of AI is it's built on algorithms and data. And so if you draw your data from one set of people or one location, and then you try to utilize that data on another set of people or another location, then you may have outcomes that don't really match that group. And so I think that's one of the biggest things from a healthcare perspective we have to be careful of as we try to go through and say, okay, are we going to diagnose somebody based on this data set? That's something that I think we're excited about, but we just have to make sure that there are parameters around that and we're doing the right thing from that perspective.
Is there also excitement in healthcare about AI? I mean, could AI help us find the cure to diseases?
I don't think we're there yet, but in my humble opinion, I do think it can. And what I mean by that is I think if we're able to aggregate, let's just say, for example, genetic data, maybe we can pull all of that data into one, data repository and then bump it up against, folks that have cancer and kind of, okay, this genetic marker meets this and this genetic marker meets that. And with us having such powerful data machines or machine learning and whatnot, maybe we can find cures for different things by looking through that data.
So as we go into manufacturing, we just saw in the last conversation about the impact about AI in manufacturing, things from robotics, automation, demand forecasting, defect detection. My first question goes to Paul with BMW. How can AI be leveraged to improve productivity and innovation?
Well, I think the first thing to recognize are two key words. One is replacement, and one is extending. And AI is not there to replace people. AI is there to extend human capabilities. And if you look at it that way, it's very powerful that you can actually use it to do things faster. You can do things with more data. You can get more answers. If you think about a manufacturing organization, we have so much data. And the biggest thing that we look at right now is how can we get an answer? And I forgot the previous presenter. She did a fantastic job describing a few issues that we have right now. And I wasn't an early adopter of data analytics either. I'm an old school. I still use an Excel spreadsheet. And at the end of the day, what you have to actually come to is, first, recognizing what is a good use of AI. But I remember early on in engineering school, one of the things that our professor taught us was the most important thing you can get out of an engineering education is to understand also not just how to solve a problem, but when to recognize something looks wrong. And the biggest concern I have is that if somebody doesn't understand that not just getting the answer, that's not really the main topic. The main topic is taking the answer and doing something with it. So the more we start to use AI to run these powerful opportunities to look at more data, to look at more things, we have to make sure we have the insurance and the checks and balances in the system to not make a wrong decision based on something that just doesn't look wrong. And my fear is that we're pulling away from looking at data and just cutting and pasting it into something.
That's a big concern, especially when you manufacture, if you haven't heard, the world's ultimate driving machine. So, Thomas, same question for you. How can AI be leveraged to improve productivity and innovation?
So I think I would build on some of the points that we just mentioned there. When we're talking about the productivity of our customers, I think we need to understand, ultimately, of course, always the challenges that they're facing. Some of the points that you mentioned in terms of being able to use the ability to perhaps also influence the demographic challenges that our customers have, not only within America, but throughout the world. We have workforce challenges where the demand and ultimately our customers have a demand, and in that area there isn't necessarily the workforce. There isn't, for several reasons, in terms of developing that country. For example, Siemens is global, and we work in developing countries where these technologies can allow and really facilitate the economic development of countries to be able to come to a level that we're, let's say, take for granted in the Western world. So it can also, let's say, democratize the technology throughout the globe. I think that's on a very high level, the ability that we can have there. Whilst also, in the fundamentals, we can also work with the tools that it provides us to really be complementary to what we're already doing out there. So how can we increase the sustainability of our operations in terms of reducing waste? The ability that we have nowadays to work with digital twins of production facilities and products, to be able to robustly then regressively test those without having to waste materials, without having to waste other resources which are finite. These are all things that are incredibly beneficial for us, not only in the manufacturing world, but again, bringing it back to our global objectives, really to be sustainable across all the spaces that manufacturing has inherently been incredibly energy demanding, as well as other resources that we have to deal with and that our customers are challenged with. So I think these are all areas where on a higher level, we can have we can leverage huge benefit from the technologies.
So I'm going to ask you about any concerns you have about Gen AI, but before I do that, for the benefit of the audience, will you talk a little bit more about what Siemens does as a company, all the areas you're in as a company?
I'll do my best. But you've got to promise to stop me when people start falling asleep. So Siemens, we have in our core business about 320,000 people globally. We're made up of two core divisions, smart infrastructure and digital industries. Smart infrastructure looks at the electrification of our daily lives. Digital industry looks at the automation and software that we need to achieve that. In addition, we do have some other daughter companies. So Siemens Mobility is perhaps been in the press recently in North America for the high-speed rail link out in California, and as well as Siemens Healthcare. So again, I think quite well known for many people who've maybe been in an MRI machine. The chances are that it was either a Siemens or a GE machine. That's what we do on the front of things. We're working incredibly towards. I mean, we're the largest technology company in Europe, and arguably in the world now in certain core areas. We're certainly the market leader for automation globally, and understand that with that, to avoid any Spider-Man quotes, becomes a huge amount of responsibility when ultimately, and I think that comes down to the AI topic today, really understanding the purpose behind it. What purpose are we trying to achieve, and is it that it's core that we're also working together with our customers on to make sure that not only is this being applied robustly in the industrial space, but also with purpose. So that's, I would hopefully in a nutshell, a little bit to what Siemens do.
Well, this isn't on the program, but on behalf of a very grateful community, we want to thank BMW and Siemens for choosing Spartanburg. You guys are an amazing addition to our corporate family here. So now, tell me about your concerns in this space. You heard a little bit from Paul. Now tell us about your concerns, if you have any.
I'm an optimist, for sure, a realist as well, but certainly I would say more towards an optimist. I think keeping it relevant to today also with the aspect of the academic influence and how we're bringing in the next generation. I think democratizing technology is always critical. It's always important to understand that there's equal opportunity across the board when it's not only, let's say, the industry that can benefit from this, that it's also adopted, let's say, in a more broader fashion. Of course, just as been mentioned with other examples, there's always an opportunity for tools and technology to be misused, absolutely. But I think that's also why it's incredibly critical that our young talents are also supported in understanding that and developing the key skill sets that they need to be able to, avoid this idea of sort of paralysis through analysis, paralysis of data, paralysis of misunderstanding or misappropriation of information. But I would personally, I don't see that as a sole issue around AI. I think these are developing, evolving topics around how we as a society and our young talents can also understand how to distinguish between right and wrong, and also understanding how can they really robustly test the information that they're being presented with to validate if this is accurate. If this, again, are we talking about just solving a problem, or are we understanding what's behind it and being able to validate if this is really, if we're identifying the right things or not. And I think those are all areas that we need to be aware of, but not scared of, but certainly aware of and make sure that there are, I think someone mentioned the guide rails in place to avoid that being misused.
So I want to get to education. We have a lot of educators in the room who want to hear some of these answers. But so this is really for Parks, Paul and Thomas first. I promise we're gonna get to questioning or asking you a few questions. But what skills are you looking for as you're bringing team members into your various industries? What are you looking for? If you had a wish list, what would you tell these educators that you want in employees? They can be evergreen or technical skills. You guys jump in.
Very simple answer. And actually, I give this answer all the time. I need a problem solver. And I need somebody who can critically think. I need somebody who can work in an international team environment. I need somebody that wants to work in a manufacturing environment and be part of a strong culture in a team. But I need, first and foremost, when people ask me, what majors am I looking for? I'm looking for every major. I'm looking for somebody who can actually sit down and solve a problem. When you add in the additional pressure of AI, I'm looking for somebody who can actually understand and comprehend their answer and then go back and validate it. Because the biggest concern I have is, and I get people all the time come to me, same with data analytics. They came to me and they built this wonderful Power BI chart, and I looked at them and said, and? What should I do with that? Interpret it, make a decision on it, and actually send me something that we can make a forward path with that decision. I need somebody that can do that can understand what it means.
And from a healthcare perspective, I think, we're always looking for the compassionate, caring individual, somebody that they're doing it for the work for the right reasons. With AI and the new technology that's coming forward, we still have to have that because, one of the things I think, Paul, you mentioned earlier is that AI is not replacing human care. From a healthcare perspective, it's enhancing it. And so we're still going to have to be at the bedside with patients every day. And so we're looking for that compassionate person. But we also need a quick learner, a fast learner, somebody who's flexible and willing to learn new things. Because AI technology is coming at us every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get some kind of email about some new cardiac tool that's got AI in it. And so, we've got to be flexible and ready to turn on a dime.
Thomas, what are you looking for?
I would say diversity of perspective with a commonality of purpose in terms of, I think the points that Paul mentioned are absolutely critical in terms of I don't want a cookie cutter in terms of application to people. The individuals are so critical, and that will become even more critical when it comes to really streamlining the back end of what's happening. So the personality, the maturity of people to understand how it is to work in a team, how you can achieve more as a collective than they can as an individual, and really come out with the skill sets to understand that AI and the tools that we have, they won't replace hard work. They won't replace the challenges that we'll face on a daily basis. And those are the things that the passion, the expectation of and the drive to really face those challenges and bring the passion to apply all the tools that they have and look forward to learning even more as a collective. Those are really what we're looking for. And again, when we talk about bias in AI and things like that, those are no new things, and we also need to avoid bias in our teams and make sure that we are achieving the diversity of across the board, and especially of mindset and to be able to really apply everything that we're talking about today and other topics in a way that we're going to get the most out of it.
Thank you. So, Corey, how do we meet manufacturing from the education side of the house? I mean, how do we collaborate with manufacturing to deliver the skills that you just heard about?
Yeah, great question. A big part of what I do is go around the state and really the southeastern region in general is work with industry partners and institutions on how do we connect the two sides of the house, the two sectors, right? And I think for a long time, higher education had this posture of, we kind of know it all, right? Like we're the curriculum experts, we can staff this, we have the faculty, and they certainly do, right? But we're seeing increasingly that industry, they are on the cutting edge of the use cases and the applications of these tools and technologies that our students are going to need to have some degree of exposure to in order to thrive in the workplace, right? And so it's incumbent upon higher education and industry to really seek out opportunities to come together, and whether it's through formal industry councils, whether it's curriculum review committees, whether it's co-designing programs with each other, to really think through in a thoughtful manner on how can we be sure that our students and potential or future employees, right, are gaining the platform of skills, knowledge, and abilities at younger and younger ages that they need to thrive in the workplace. And what does that look like, right? We hear from students all the time that they want the pathway, right? Especially when we go down the K-12 world, they want the pathway to that $100,000 a year plus job. And from the workforce development side, the reality is, my son's in 5th grade. The job that he has doesn't exist, or will have, isn't in existence yet. So how do we design a pathway there? Which isn't the right question. The question is, how do we design a platform, right? And our institutions are really set up well to be the place that we have lifelong learning, and we've heard this said on multiple different occasions today. Instead of being an endpoint destination for the people in our communities, that it's a pit stop, that we are set up to provide what that student and worker needs, and that our systems between education and industry are collaborative here. It's professional learning. It is not academic. It is not purely employee-based, that these things are one and the same. And so how do we make sure that we have systems that provide on-ramps and off-ramps throughout an individual's working career and beyond that really help us build the communities and the workforce that we really want? And yes, it goes down deeper in exposing students at a younger age. We talk about healthcare often. I don't think many 6th graders know that nuclear medical technicians is a job that they could have, right? But we know that they're going to have to pass anatomy and physiology. So how do we help them make curricular decisions that can help set up so that we can have the healthcare of the future? How do we build, prior life I was in Tennessee, and we had a lot of stackable credentials with Siemens in Tennessee, where programs were built at the post-secondary level from short-term certificates all the way through graduate school that had embedded Siemens certifications for advanced manufacturing purposes. It's are we thoughtful in those ways so that we can really work together collaboratively in this space and just continue to do this on an annual and regular basis, I think is really the key there.
Well, you touch on those evergreen skills that we keep hearing about as well. That has not changed from when I had a flip phone, right? It has not changed. So will you touch on your advice to all of us on how to make sure that we're keeping those soft skills incorporated in as we're rapidly moving through technology changes?
Absolutely. So my undergrad experience was at a private liberal arts college, and if you're in that world, you've heard a lot of moaning and groaning, doom and gloom over the years about the future vitality. But if you go over about 5 years ago, the conversation around those kind of institutions or even around general education programs was we need to get rid of them. They need to be all employer specific. Technical, computer science was the word of the day, and this was right around when Amazon was doing the HQ2 process nationally. And if you fast forward to today, what you hear, and I think you've heard it today, you've already heard it on this panel, we need a breadth of skills. We need cross-disciplinary knowledge. We need deeper and broader expertise on things, which in my higher ed brain, it says we need to continue to have robust general education, but we need to do it in a thoughtful manner. Right, think through the skills that Matt shared today, that Burning Glass has put out. And one of the topics of conversation we have in the higher ed community right now in South Carolina is might be seismic change, and forgive me for getting a little wonky really fast, but in asking this question, how many of you searching for your jobs ever pulled up a prior syllabi so you could look at the student learning outcomes to help guide your process? Right? We've seen skills, they've been mentioned today on the panel. All the higher ed folks in the room, how many classes do you teach that have project management in there, or data analysis, or developing soft skills and teamwork, right? These evergreen skills that we've been talking about. Well, how do we actually equip students to find success here, right? So conversation that we are having is, let's take our syllabi, let's take our institutional handbooks. Could we pilot using metadata to tag courses with the kinds of skills that we're seeing, that we've been speaking about, that we develop in all these classes, So the students don't have to think about it. Like, what would it look like to put it, and there are companies doing this, to put it into a solution that could automatically say, hey, you've done data visualization. You've done financial planning. You might not be able to articulate it yet, but we're going to help you with that, right? We'll partner with your career advisors to do those things. And so I think that those are some of the things that we really need to take 2 more steps further on the higher ed side, and this needs to happen in conjunction with our workforce and industry partners to say, hey, what do you really need, and how can we make sure that this is built in throughout the entire curriculum?
So as we're adjusting the workforce needs, I know that all of you in the manufacturing and healthcare world are having to train today, because the employees who are coming in, even if they are willing and able and have those soft skills, they still have to be trained in this ever-changing world that we're living in. So I want to start with healthcare parks. What initiatives are in place to integrate technology into healthcare training programs?
So I think we can go back to the word collaboration. I think a lot of what we're doing from a healthcare perspective, and I'll just speak for Spartanburg Regional, is going out and collaborating, working with, your high schools, your colleges, but also, I think healthcare organizations are going out and touching base with the professional organizations and associations, like the medical associations, like American College of Surgeons, American College of Cardiology, to make sure that we're all on the same page. So I think we're going out trying to work with them, making sure, okay, this is what we're seeing on the front line. This is what we're going to need our workforce to look like when they get to us. And so a lot of it really deals in that area, just with collaboration and partnership.
How about at BMW? What are you doing with training in the gap here?
Well, it's interesting. So we look at it, there's a division between employer attractiveness and associate retention. And the employer attractiveness, we have to think about it holistically, that manufacturing as an entire industry is becoming less attractive. So getting people to actually want to come to work at a manufacturing facility has its own challenges. But when I talk about how we're going to develop people, I typically put it down into 3 things. It's technical, it's professional, and it's personal. And what I tell them is, I think that the easiest of all 3 of those is technical. Right now, everybody is focused on EV. We have the most robust high voltage training in the company on this side of the world. And to me, that's the easy part. But I can tell you, half of my budget is there trying to develop leadership skills, trying to develop resiliency, trying to actually focus on the talent pipeline, so pre-skilling, so going back into the technical colleges and all the way back through. We're working in 4th grade this year. And then for our current workforce, it's upskilling and reskilling. So giving people the additional skills in their own area, or giving them the skills to be able to move between areas. But I can tell you, my focus right now, it's leadership. And I think everybody in all industries are seeing, after the last 4 to 5 years when people have been able to work from home, that they stifled innovation, they stifled collaboration, and now coming back into the workforce, they're unable to work with people. And that's my biggest fear, is how do you get people to want to work with people, and how do you give them those skills again? So our focus really is the holistic picture, but I'm not allowed to say soft skills. My team gets mad at me because they're really not soft. They're critical, resilient skills, and we call them now durable skills in-house.
That's a good point. Durable skills. I like that. How about at Siemens?
I can build really, I think that the points that Paul made are fully transferable to the challenges at Siemens, very similar. Especially, I would emphasize that the last points in terms of the changes in the workforce that we've seen over the last years, and the new challenges that's brought up now in collaboration, in leadership, and in problem solving. I think because Paul already answered it so well applicable to Siemens, I would add then from a different standpoint, it starts also with leadership in the organization. That's very, very strong in Siemens. So a couple of years ago, Roland Bush, our CEO, defined the North Star of the organization, and then the North Star is built around 5 pillars, and that was mandatorily training. That mandatory training on the North Star was assigned to all senior leadership across the globe. Gamified as well, sort of country by country or region by region. So you could see on a table, which region had completed the training and things like this. We did really well. We came second. We were in first place for quite a long time, but Germany has 100,000 employees, so they've got a lot more senior leadership. But the US did really well. And anyway, so that really sets the tone from the top, because also when we're talking about change, Siemens has been around for 165 years. We were the company that laid the first telecommunications cable across the Atlantic. So we've been through a lot of change, but it's also training is about bringing your team and your people with you through the change and helping them understand why you're doing so much. And that starts with then training, the senior leadership to be able to communicate the goals and the objectives that we have in a way that's understandable, but also believable. That it has credibility behind it, and that's I would add to the points I've already made then with that perspective.
Well, I want to ask you to dig a little bit deeper in how do you keep your workforce current on all of this changing technology? How do you find the information that you need to keep your workforce up to date on changing technology?
I would say we're a little bit spoiled at Siemens because we have an incredible learning team globally and also regionally, where we have a really huge learning database across the board, and you can go in and find incredible trainings really in all aspects of our technology portfolio, but also when we're talking about leadership skills, when we're talking about mentoring, coaching, working in collaboration with teams, working in where you have conflict, all these types of things. There's a huge spectrum of learnings that are available for all employees at all levels. So that's, I would say, an incredible resource. About 7 years ago, the organization defined defined the purpose of a learning organization as well, which and then a learning group in every division, which is responsible, explicitly for that. And then, of course, it comes down to again, the leadership to make sure that that's emphasized and to use the opportunities that we have with the FaceTime with our teams and organizations to be able to emphasize specific points along the way, to really, I would say, emphasize and grow that appetite when it comes to incentivizing through purpose, through other leverage, other avenues that we have to make sure that people understand the opportunities that are available to them and the amount of resources that are there. And finally, of course, it comes down to the intrinsic motivation of all of our employees as well to want to undertake that journey and really bring everything that they need. We can go so far, and then it's a collaboration.
So, Paul, I agree with you about the need for leadership training, but really the same question for you at BMW. How are you at BMW? How does BMW stay on the cutting edge of these technologies and integrate that into the workforce?
So we have a very similar structure to Siemens, not as extensive, but we have a strong team in Munich that does the foundational training for the entire company. But the good news is, in the United States and in the plant here, I've got a strong team that continues to research, to figure out exactly what is really required in order for us to stay up to date. And I think that the shift has really been to make sure that whatever we need in order to make sure that the culture of the company continues to build, to not just assume that when somebody comes to a class, as soon as they finish, they walk through the door and they're trained and we're done. It's really about the reinforcement of that through coaching, through mentoring, through strong leadership that actually helps to reinforce the bricks with the mortar. Not just assuming that our job is to deliver things, but our job is to ensure that things continue to actually align with our North Star and our core values, and to make sure that we're always evaluating whether we're still relevant. We don't want to get complacent. We don't want to get lazy. And in a manufacturing environment, it's more than just technology. Technology is a huge part of it. But again, I see that as the easier part to actually train. It's getting people to understand, because they're not robots. They're real people that have feelings and other things that happen in their lives. You have to make sure that they still align. And how do you become attractive to the high school student that has no idea what he wants to do in his life? So we have to also, and we learned this lesson the last few years, we have to also make sure we understand what's happening in primary schools, because that's our next workforce.
Keep expanding, because we're going to keep building that workforce. So, Parks, I want to change the topic just a bit to the government's role in healthcare when it comes to AI. So what role should government policy play in supporting AI education and workforce development in healthcare?
So I think all of us would probably say the first word should be funding, but we all know that that's not practical or going to happen. So we can't use that. I think the other piece where the government can really help all of us, and I think we've heard a little bit about this on this panel, is surrounding the guardrails, the guidelines, the standards and parameters by which we're all going to kind of work around technology, AI, and everything else. And I think once those, and I think they need to do that in conjunction with the private sector. I don't think that needs to be just a governmental overreach per se, just that they're going to come up with. I think it needs to be the private sector needs to be involved in that. And I think once that's in place, I think it would be important, at least from a healthcare perspective, that we have some standards that we all need to adhere to make sure that we're getting the outcome, the positive outcomes that we all want from whatever we're dealing with AI and technology. So again, I think it's more around those areas, just those guidelines, standards, and parameters.
So Corey, as you hear all of this, what are some of your thoughts about how education can keep up with the educational world, can keep up with what these gentlemen need in their companies?
How much time do we have? I think we have to think about it from just the exposure all the way down, even down into early education. I think there's a lot of conversations right now in the preschool to graduate school, call it P20, space around two-generation models. It's really working with both the parents, caregivers, as well as the children in school so that we can really hit both parties with a lot of these conversations, and then equipping faculty and teachers with the skills and just the learning opportunities to engage in this. And so I think a great model for this is back in the 90s, the aerospace engineering sector was really disappointed in the quality of graduates that was being produced at America's colleges and universities. And so they really took a deep dive into accreditation standards, but also the things that they could do to make sure faculty understood, right, what was being expected at the Boeings and Lockheed Martins of the world. And so they started all sorts of work-based learning opportunities, faculty residencies, undergraduate and graduate research, just funding, so that there was a lot better collaboration, right, between the two. And so that faculty understood what was being asked of the workers on the line or the engineers that worked in these firms. And I think that we can take lessons from that experience and apply it to the conversations we're having around artificial intelligence. We heard earlier today with Matt's presentation, the state's going to be putting a really heavy emphasis on work-based learning at the K-12 and higher education levels. So the state basically passed the Unified State Plan earlier this spring about the educational workforce expectations. And in there is a really heavy emphasis on work-based learning. So we see that at the K-12 level already. We've seen it in apprenticeships and other things that the state has done in the past. But frankly, that we've kind of let go stale a little bit. And we really need to take a fresh look at how we're going to ensure that every single student in our K-12 and in our higher education sector have opportunities here. Because when we think about it from an economic development and workforce development perspective, right, when you all are recruiting that next Siemens or future investment, right, is it a better sell for them to know that we produce 6,000 engineers a year, or is it a better sell that we produce 6,000 engineers that have had a quality internship experience during their undergraduate experience? Right? It's a value add. And so we really need to be thinking through that co-curricular structure in addition to those classroom lessons and the other things that our students have exposure to. I mean, it was a great presentation earlier, and I'll just echo this from my own just perspective, anecdotally as a parent. My son didn't really have much computer access until 3rd grade. And this past year, he ran for student council, and we asked him to, do you want to make campaign signs? He was like, yeah, sure. He used Canva, and he used PowerPoint and some other tools, and he used all the AI functions and put it out about an hour. Done. He's still not very digital literate, but he understands, right, how to use these tools. And I think we do underestimate what is happening already at the K-12 level. But I think it's to our point, it's like, how do we really help augment and support this work? And then from my end, in the government sector, it's like, how do we put the frameworks in place, right, that we can both balance the risk and the governance issues and privacy issues that we see, but also the tremendous asset that AI and these other new technologies are providing us in the students and workforce development opportunities that we're seeing.
So I heard you touch on it, and I'm going to ask you to go kind of back through it, because we heard this in our last presentation. How do you guarantee equitable access in this world of training and education and AI and other technologies?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I'm going to plug Dr. Steinke on this one, but we have some conversations. I'll just speak specifically for the Commission on Higher Education. So we have very limited oversight ability. But if the state is saying, hey, we want every student to have work-based learning or high-impact internships, research, travel away, like whatever it may be, right? The only way you can do that is require it. And so it has to be built into some policy, right? And then it has to probably have some state funding attached to it, so that when we get a new academic program coming through, that has to be part of it, right? But then you have to think through the programs that have already been approved and how do we incent the integration of these. And many students are already doing this, but really thinking through that, because really that's the only way that you can ensure that all South Carolinians have access to this, whether they're in high school or at one of our post-secondary institutions.
So we're going to need to wrap up here. I can't believe how fast the time has gone, but I want to ask you this question. What question did I not ask you that I should have about generative AI, technology, our future? Or was there anything that any other panelists said that you want to comment on? Because if you don't control this part, I'm fixing to let them start asking you questions.
I think the only thing that I would add here at the end is that we've talked a lot about working together, collaboration, partnership. And I think that's important with all of this. And I think, just from a Spartanburg regional healthcare system perspective, and you talk about evolving needs of the market, what can we do as a health system to help the workforce and workforce development? I think one of the best things I can leave you with and ideas that you may want to look at is something you're very familiar with, Katherine, and so is our team that's in the room, but it's something that we just did with you guys recently, and that signed I think a pledge to host 100 interns in our organization. And so I think, the more organizations get out and do that, I think the better off we'll all be, whether that's for AI, for technology, workforce development, or workforce in general. I think that's probably a good thing to do.
So from my side, I would say 3 things. One is to emphasize the point that AI is not replacing people. It's extending their capabilities to do things. Second, my big concern is that people stop once they get an easy answer and don't know how to deal with the second, third, fourth question down. And third, my biggest thing, again, about ethics, and more importantly, have respect for the tool. If they have respect for the tool, then they'll have respect for the answer they're going to get and how to use it.
We're going down the line. You're up next.
I would encourage our employers and the post-secondary folks in the room to really think through how we can leverage the educational benefits that employees receive. We hear a lot that they typically go underutilized. And so how can we develop different programs, and I would say take the degree off the table, right? How do we think through short-term programs or certifications or these other things that institutions can really partner with employers to help upskill and reskill your workforce as AI continues to develop or any other kind of new technology comes into place? Because I think that is there's a lot of meat on the bone in that conversation, and I think that we could all do better across the sectors and making sure that we better prepare and provide opportunities for those that are in our communities.
Thomas?
All right, I'll try and write it out. Then I would say jumping on the three, it's got to be robust keeping it specific to industry. It has to be at a level that it can be applied across challenging environments effectively. It needs to be accessible in terms of it needs to be understood, it needs to be challenged, it shouldn't be accepted just on face value. And ultimately, it needs to be applied with a purpose. And when the purpose is, let's say, is well grounded, then the application will benefit from it.
Thank you all. Before I wrap this up, though, I have to let you in on a little secret. We circulated questions before this event, and I don't know that I used any of them. So if you will join me in giving them an extra applause for four-wheeling it with me. They're all agreeing. I didn't use any of those questions, so thank you guys so much.
Let's give Katherine a round of applause. Great job. She did. I have a gift for everyone. So, Barbara, will you come up? Wait before y'all leave. Wait. I don't want to chase you. Come on. Come on up. We have a gift for everybody. So, good. Thank you all very much. Now, didn't Katherine do that like a pro? She has so much experience. And I'm just waiting for the Katherine show to come on the network television soon. Thank you all very much. I've asked Christine.